Most people will lean on that. I wasn't provided. Right? It's just not my fault, right? Well, I wasn't provided with either, so I invented the tools. We've all heard the adage, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. Well, that 20% wasn't provided, but they were like, giddy up, giddy up.
Leadership DM, Jay Scott's direct message to his team and clients. Learn how anyone like you can become an irreplaceable leader of unstoppable teams. Welcome to Leadership DM. Jay joins us today to discuss his latest article, The Challenger Playbook, Challenging the Work, Not the People. As part of his multiplier series, diving into Liz Wiseman's book, The 5 Behaviors of Multipliers. Can you bring that to life?
So the initial challenger idea is push people harder, more ideas, right? Identify more problems, more. And we're always overwhelmed and we're having to say no to protect our capacity simply because in most cases, there's no bar. People do not have clarity on what good or done is.
So that brings us to then the tools of a challenger, right? I was just thinking about, when you go to school growing up, whether it be elementary, middle, high school, college, you're always provided with all of these tools, an agenda, some kind of a guardrail or a bar, to your point, of how to accomplish certain tasks, certain projects. You're put into a group project and you are handed a piece of paper that breaks down exactly how you should accomplish this project. You have these tools that keep you on track to the destination of success. And I feel like these days, especially in the corporate world, we're not provided those tools really anymore as much.
Oh, I love what you just said. I'm going to acknowledge that you are correct, but I also want to acknowledge the problem with what you just said. Most people will lean on that. I wasn't provided. Right? It's just not my fault, right? Well, I wasn't provided with either. So I invented the tools. Now, we're solving the problem with I wasn't provided. We've all heard the adage, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. Well, that 20% wasn't provided, but they were like, giddy up, right? You're here because you're here on this team, Faith, because you're like, giddy up. But I do acknowledge that's a notion, right? Like I wasn't provided, but also to reinforce what you're talking about, what James Clear says, we don't ever rise to the level of our goals or our aspirations. We fall to the level of our systems. So back to the tools, like if we don't have these tools and good discipline in place, if we don't have a bar defined, if we don't have a mechanism for writing down, managing, and aligning with the rest of the team on our priorities regularly, right, we're going to fall really far from our goals.
Well, I mean, I could be wrong. The world can correct me on this, but I would believe that a very high percentage of meetings people are walking into with no guidance necessarily. They don't know why they're there. They don't know what they're looking to accomplish. They don't, et cetera, right? So where is the productivity? Where are the outcomes being accomplished? Where is the chaos being cleared? How do people know what to do? And so the leader, the CEO, the person in the room who's supposed to be guiding or in charge, to your article's point, goes, well, I'm going to make these people A, B, C, D.
Right.
They don't know what they're doing. Well, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to push it. I'm going to get something out of them right now. And then the ideas started flying. Chaos. Because were any of those ideas thought about before the meeting? No. How could they be? Because they don't even know why they're there. But the challenger at the head of the room, the false challenger at the head of the room is like, guys, come on, give me your ideas. Let's talk. We're in a meeting. We got to talk.
Right. And then there's a winner. Whoever's idea is selected by the manager, they're the winner. And for at least the next 10 minutes, everybody wishes they were that person because apparently that person is going to be awarded something on Mount Olympus upon high, at least a luncheon, potentially the next promotion. And so we're all just, we're competing and achieving nothing.
Because when they walk out of that meeting,
we're struggling to achieve, and most people are burnout busy. Again, look at the statistics.
Yeah, that's really what these tools do. Is it gives the challenger like the playbook like an actual playbook, like think of a judge panel. It's the criteria to judge things on what to work on, what's a good idea to be submitted. And beyond protecting capacity, I can see it protecting emotions. Because, in those scenarios, right, like where people start challenging the person instead of the ideas is because they don't know what's going to make it good. They're just calling bullshit on it. Well, you just think that. Or like to quote the dude from the Lebowski, that's just like your opinion, man. But what's great about the criteria is it's not the opinion because you've come with the 1-3-1. You've worked through it. You're like, this is how it's going to solve team member satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and improve profitability, neither at the expense of the others. And you've done the research. You've done the rule of 10, so you have 10 different ideas to inform that. But what's great is everybody on the team could trust that from the other person. So when you're exchanging and debating these ideas in the meeting, it's just a matter of like then prioritizing or figuring out the work plan on how it's going to do those three things together. So then now you can maximize those times without getting butthurt of like, oh my gosh, Jay did not pick my idea this week. I'm just going to idea harder in the next meeting. I'm going to idea so hard. I'm going to yell. But anyway, I digress.
I have a question. So, Faith, tell me about a recent objective that you started working on without a crisp definition or proving demand. How did it play out? And by the way, tell the story. I want you to tell the story because it happened on my watch. But we learned and grew together, which is one of the reasons what we're talking about is so meaningful to you.
Thinking about a specific thing, clearly.
I mean, I like the sling it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was asked to provide an email to the execution leaders, giving them the marketing content through social, LinkedIn.
Well, and for the record, I asked as the executive, and in my mind, I had a loose understanding of how it would benefit us, how it would improve the 3 pillars and why we were doing it. So I asked for it, right? I didn't go through the 1-3-1 process because I assumed you or somebody on the marketing team would, but you being new, you just jumped on it. I mean, and got giddy up. You did it, right? And how did it go? How long did you work on it before you delivered the very first one?
A while. I worked on it a while because I kind of had to put together the ask from my own brain, what I assumed the ask was, which is just going to cause more time, more effort, very little clarity. And then I sent them out. And then I went to the execution leaders, and they were like, what is this?
Hold on. I saw the first one come out, and it looked great. Like you had a banner in the email, like it was professionally done. I looked at, you had a bunch, it was full of content. It was full of thoughtful content. It was full of call to actions. And I thought, the second I saw it, because it came out on a Thursday or Friday, it came out on a Friday. I went, she worked really hard on this. This is really great. And I haven't heard anything from anybody since I asked for this to happen. And I was like, let's see how this goes. But in my mind, I was thinking, she sent this out to the sales team. They're not even going to read it.
Yeah.
So a week went by. I didn't hear anything from the sales team. You didn't hear anything else from the sales team. We're all running around doing what we're doing. The next week goes by and you bring it up in our weekly alignment meeting, right? And you were like, hey, what are you guys doing with this? And I waited. It was like crickets, right? Like the 2 guys responsible for sales are like, and I was like, okay, guys, listen, save space, say you didn't read it.
Yeah.
Well, I've never.
And right then and there, right, we basically worked through a 1-3-1, a way forward, agreed on a new strategy. You shifted gears, and now we have a whole playbook for how we're going to handle that and how we're going to accomplish what it is that we need to accomplish.
Well, okay, so then that's a question I have for you then. If the team member has the idea and wants to bring it to the team and to the leader, they're not just going to walk in the room and spew out their ideas. They're going to put together 1-3-1. However, in that reverse, or I guess the question is, so that's also supposed to occur in the reverse. So when the leader or the team comes to the team member asking for something, that should also be an opportunity to build out a 1-3-1? Because that I didn't know.
And here's the thing. You know my belief on going back and doing rework, right? Like, and so so think about our meetings, which I prefer to refer to as doings, right? So we set up meetings not to give status because that's baloney. We set up meetings to align and advance our objectives. Often there's pre-work necessary before the meeting for people to do that. So what happens if my team shows up to a meeting and they haven't done the pre-work? What do? We do the work right there in the meeting, right? Okay. then I recognize that learning moments need to be that learning moments, right? And so you're probably thinking, how come I didn't? So we worked it all out in the meeting, but how come I didn't make you then go rewrite it down and bring it back to us and put it in front of us? Here's why. Because that to me feels very bureaucratic. It feels like very bureaucratic. And what I don't want to ever do is stop the presses, right? I wasn't going to be like, okay, now we figured this out, stop the presses, Faith, go back, write it down, do this whole thing. And it's not necessary to accomplish what I need to accomplish, which is this. The very next time I ask you to do something loosely, right, or casually, you will do one of two things, I'm sure of it. Are you asking me to put together a 1-3-1? Or you'll say, I got you, and you will put together a 1-3-1. I saw how you responded to this article, and I saw how you responded in that moment. And so for me, I accomplished what I need to accomplish as a leader, right? I kept us moving. I kept us moving forward. When you were stuck, we as a team used it as a teaching moment because you weren't the only person that learned from that exercise. And when one person's teaching, two people are learning. And in this case, as a team, I feel like we actually came closer together. We learned how to work. People took away what they took away. And so what I didn't want to do was slow the presses and make you go write all that down. And it's significant. If this were a larger, like a project, something that would require a challenge opportunity, I would have said we need to stop and do that. But this is something fairly simple. This lay it forward. We know exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to put these tools in the hands of our team members, put these tools in the hands of our customers, and trying to get them connected with what we're creating for them and start sharing it out there, right? And so we're all crystal clear. That engine is already in place, right? Because you've already got it into your cadence. It's already on your flywheel. There was no reason to go back and do any kind of bureaucratic
and it's
paperwork.
Interesting going back to the concept then of capacity, workload, saying no to projects or whatever, because I feel like these days, a lot of team members, employees, and I'm one of them, and this is what I do constantly. If I have a request from my superior, my CEO, my boss, my whatever, I have to get it done. It's got to get done. He just asked me for this. So I have to get it done, right? And that's what I did. I mean, within 48 hours, I was like, he asked me for this. So I got to come up with something, right? But if we stick with the structure, the organization, the tools here, you can have that conversation back with your leader and say, okay, you asked for this. This is something that, you want me to put a 1-3-1 together for it. Awesome. I'm going to put that on my 2x2. I'm going to make sure it's on my weekly focusing for the next week. It's going to follow this cadence. And you're going to understand as a leader, because this is what I asked for. And no, I didn't ask for it 5 minutes from now. And if I did, I'd let you know.
Right.
And we have clarity, we have alignment, and we have outcomes that are so much stronger and finalized at the end because then we're not having to go over them like we had to.
Right. And think about that too. And you've seen this over and over coming from somewhere else into this organization. How many times has that habit of urgency that you brought in with you caused you stress where I've had to be like, oh no, Faith, you don't have to be stressed out. We don't have to worry about it, right? Remember, like in the beginning, before you mastered the 2x2 process, you literally feel like you were juggling 1,000 number one priorities. And when it finally landed on my desk, you were having a little bit of a stressed out moment. I was like, my God, no, man, let's figure this out. There's only so much we could do. And and this takes time, right? Like when somebody comes into an organization and the organization is always sort of like evolving. So as you mastered that, the stress reduced. And even in this exercise, you're seeing, okay, Jay, the CEO, the founder of the company, asked me for something and he didn't say when. And frankly, like I could have been clearer. I could have said, hey, I need you to do a 1-3-1 for this. And I need that 1-3-1 by then, but given everything else we were juggling, I didn't. I was like, this is something that I want. She'll write it down somewhere. She'll get to it. And now that's my expectation, that you're going to put it in your backlog or your control log. You'll bring a 1-3-1. And here's the thing, because I didn't ask for an end date, I didn't establish the urgency. And this is a great story I've got with Andrew. In 6 months, when I realized it never got done, when it popped back into my head, I'd be like, right, I didn't tell her when I needed that done. So it was never a priority. And I would just call you up and say, hey, because why would it pop back into my mind 6 months later? In Andrew's case, it was because the season had come, the weather had come. When I asked him for it, I didn't really need it. 6 months went by. I said, get to it when you can. 6 months went by. Now I needed it. It popped into my head because I needed it. And I called him and I was like, hey man, can you get that to me? He was like, sure, Jay, no problem. Right. So, like we have to, I think as leaders, we have to be conscious of our contribution to how the situation unfolds. And so especially in your learning, I wasn't like, oh my God, Faith, why did you do that without a 1-3-1? No, I saw you send it out and I was like, ooh, let's see how this goes. And then we all learned. And I think that exercise brought us a little bit closer as a team.
Definitely.
How do you challenge the work if you yourself aren't maybe a challenging person or challenger person? Because we use a framework, challenger or connector. People usually kind of follow one of those two. But if you're more of a connectory person, how does this framework allow a connector like me to challenge the work?
Okay, so first we have to define for the audience what you're talking about.
All right.
Loosely speaking, right? There's two archetypes let's just call it in the world.
Human.
And this is nature versus nurture, right?
Right.
People are born to this and then life happens to us and we try on different sort of roles and different things and different behaviors in our lives to try to be as successful as we can be, because fundamentally human beings want to be successful at home with their friends, their families, and at work, right? So you're talking about the challenger connector framework, where challengers are born into this world naturally empathetic with strong emotional intelligence, and they operate in this world based on relationship. They love people, they want people to love them, right? And frankly, everybody loves a connector, okay? But then when it comes to being a leader, where they struggle is, like you said, challenging things. They don't want to hurt people's feelings. They struggle to give critical feedback. They struggle to set productive boundaries. Like no is not something they can say. So they'll say yes, and then unintentionally, because hope, even though we know it's not a strategy, we are hopeful creatures. They hope that they can get to it. And we all know how that plays out. Okay. So there's strengths to them as an individual and as a leader. On the weakness side was their inability or their complete lack of desire to challenge, right? Then we have over here the challenger, and this is where I was born. This is the camp that I was born in. We are driven. We're mission focused. We just want to get the work done. We don't understand why anybody's crying about it. When somebody throws up a strategy that we don't think is going to work, we have no problem saying that's wrong. We're not going to do it that way. And we just go. And you can absolutely 100% count on us to get it done. Like if we say we're going to do it, we're going to do it. We're not going to cry about it. Though as a leader, you can already tell by the way that I describe the challengers, we're missing all the good stuff that the connectors bring to the table, right? The emotional intelligence, the empathy, right? Like we don't understand why people are crying about it. This is something that has come out of every porn challenger's mouth at some point in their life, okay? And so where we struggle is people don't like working with us, right? We don't live both sides of Kim Scott's radical candor, which is care personally, challenge directly. We just run straight to that challenge, okay? And so where these models collide, right, here in the middle, where they overlap, the idea is that whether you're a challenger in nature or a connector in nature, we have to adopt each other's strengths. Okay? So you can't just be like, oh, I'm a connector, therefore this challenge that you're talking about in this article, I can't do it. I mean, if you can't, cool, but you also then can't be an effective leader. So the idea is, as a challenger, I needed to learn to be empathetic, and it's been a huge gift to my life and my heart. Okay? I've had to learn to be emotionally intelligent. I've had to learn to care personally and then challenge directly. And all that means is to show care. I don't actually have to love anybody in my heart. I just have to be kind to people. I have to think, I'm about to say something that needs to be said. How can I say it in a way that it can be heard? And then on the connector side, again, you've got all the good, you're coming to the table with all this good stuff. Everybody already loves you, right? You have to be able to say it, because otherwise you're being disloyal. You're going to let them walk off the end of that proverbial bridge, right? So you need to adopt the ability to challenge, because you've already got the first part. We both come to the table with the first part, or a part, right? Because I guess the first part is care personally, which is the strength of the connector, and then challenge directly, which is the strength of the challenger. in order to be an effective leader, both archetypes have to be able to adopt the other person's strength, right? So back to answering your question, you're like, Jay, you are a natural challenger. Yes. And I've had to work to be able to do that and not come off like an asshole. And you, Andrew, you're a natural connector. Everybody loves Andrew. And you've had to work to be like, no,
right?
We're not going to do that.
Well, and that's where these tools are like it's such a great like level set for both, because as a challenger, it's like, I could just point to the, point to the framework. Like, well, I may not want to speak up and be like, well, I don't know if that's a good idea, because you can just be like, hey, does this meet the 3 pillars? And then it's so much easier because the framework is challenging. The framework challenges the work. I'm not challenging the person, so I could not feel bad about it. And then for the challenger, they feel less challenged because they have the scoreboard, the playbook.
Both. So think about it. So let me flip this for you, right? Because as the connector, you don't want to say no. But here's the thing. It's not ever about saying no. The challengers shouldn't say no. Connectors shouldn't say no. It's simple. It's a question. Somebody comes to you with an idea. They explain it to you. You don't have to say yes or no. What you should say, if you don't understand how what they've presented to you, how what they've described to you improves one of the 3 pillars, that's what you say. You say, I don't understand how this improves one of the 3 pillars.
Surely.
None at the expense of the other. Can you help me see that? You're not saying yes or no. You're putting the responsibility on the person that's bringing this to you. And you're going to be right there with them, right? Because you're being curious, not judgmental. If you can help them get there, hey, we've got one more awesome thing that we can put on the backlog that will create value for the business once we get there, right? And it's just as good if we can't get there, because that's one thing that nobody's going to waste their time on, right? So this is the trick for the challenger. Learn how to do it in an empathetic way. Andrew, you already know how to do it in an empathetic way, which is not to be like, that's wrong, that's stupid, no, we're not going to do it, right? But it's also not natural for people to think that setting a boundary starts with a question, because here's the other thing. You're not really setting a boundary. You're saying, help me see it, right? We'll either get there together or we'll cancel it together. Either way, we're on the same team and we're together. And this is why it's challenge the work, not the team.
Yep. Yeah, challenge. How does the work get there? I love it.
Holla.
All right, thanks for joining us for Leadership DM. There's 2 more in the multiplier series, so don't miss them. The next one, Jay's going to be tackling the debater, and then we'll round it out with the investor. Don't miss any of the multiplier series or any Leadership DM. Subscribe, and you can get one of these bad boys dropped into your inbox every week. And follow Jay for articles that he publishes weekly with insights on how to become an executional leader who builds high-performing teams and unstoppable companies. Thanks for joining us. See you at the next Leadership DM.